Hello again, YouTube. Carl Butcher here. Today we're taking a look at the Gerber Suspension multi-tool. If you've watched my videos in the past, you may notice that this is a little bit of a departure from most of my videos, which have been centered around Leatherman. I have to admit I have a little bit of a bias towards Leatherman, but I feel like it's justified because they do make very good products. I've never really had any problems with them. They have an excellent warranty. They usually use very good materials. The fit and finish is just great. I feel like the designs are great. They're made in the US, so they're pretty hard to beat. But I did stumble across the Gerber Suspension, and I've seen a couple people review it, and I've heard a couple different things about it, and I decided to pick one up and take a look at it myself, just to kind of see how it compares, because it has a kind of interesting feature set for their price point. So I feel like it's worth taking a look at. I have taken a look at some of their multi-pliers, not in video, but I've owned them in the past. In fact, I used to carry them before I switched to Leatherman, and I do like the one-handed opening, so I'll probably be bringing you some reviews on the multi-pliers in the future. But for right now, I thought I'd talk about the Gerber Suspension. One cool thing about the suspension is that it's actually at a really interesting price point for multi-tools. It falls into that about around $30 area. Now, I'm going to be comparing this to a couple other tools in the same price range. Keep in mind, I'm not going by MSRP on these products. I'm going based on what I can find them for locally. And all three of these tools, the suspension, the Leatherman Sidekick, and or Wingman, which they're pretty similar. You've seen my comparison on those, so I'll let you make the decision. And the third tool I want you guys to take a look at today is the Leatherman Rebar, which I will be doing a separate review on later as we go. But I thought I'd just kind of compare it because these all kind of landed about the $30 price range. The one thing I will mention about the Sidekick is in that price range you do get a couple accessories with it. The little carabiner tool, which I've showed you in the past, is kind of cool. But it's, you know, all these tools do come with sheaths out of the package. The suspension is only available with a ballistic nylon, where you can usually pick up leather for the Leathermans, which I definitely prefer the leather, but the ballistic nylon is decent on this. I don't really want to cover the sheath for you just because I don't feel like that's really what the tool's about. So we're just going to dive right into this tool and take a look at it. Right off the bat, this tool is fairly large. If you compare it to the Sidekick, you can see it definitely sticks off the side there quite a bit. So fairly chunky, fairly thick. It's also fairly heavy. It weighs in at 8 ounces. But that aside, there are some pretty cool features. First of all the implements are outside accessible. You can see here, the blade is actually labeled, which is kind of cool little imprint there on the scales. You can see a scissors there, see a blade there. These are actually all locking tools, which is nice. This is a very flat sheep's foot style blade. So I do like the plain edge, however, I generally prefer my EDC knives to have a bit of a belly, so the straight edge is not my favorite, but it would certainly function. I have a piece of paper here. Take a look to see how sharp it is. The one thing I mentioned in the past, try to build a better cut there. One thing I mentioned in the past about Gerber products, it's definitely pretty razor sharp out of the package. See if we can split some hairs with it. It's not quite hair splitting sharp. You can see got a couple there, but they're not busting off there. So it's decent. Anyway, like I was saying, I've mentioned in the past, one of my problems with Gerber is that they use what I refer to as mystery steel, because a lot of their packages don't include the specifications for the steel. In a lot of cases, it's 7CR13MOV, which is an okay steel, but it's not very high performance steel. So it doesn't tend to hold an edge real well. It's a little soft for my taste, but it's okay for everyday carry. So the blade's suitable. One issue I do have with this blade is it is pretty short. Let's take a look at the Rebar's blade here. Now the Rebar is a little unfair because it has very large blades, but just to give you an idea of exactly how small the blade is on the Leatherman tool, let me get them in frame here. You can see it's almost an inch shorter. I'm going to put it down here on my grid lines, and let's see if we can take a look. Put these back to back. Now the grid in the background is actually 1 inch, is 1 inch squares. So if we slide that knife up there, you can see it's about 3/4 of an inch longer. And that's a tool that has the same overall length. Now keep in mind on the Rebar, the blade is not outside accessible, so that does make a difference. One thing I will mention real quick too here in the video, I'm sure you saw some of the kind of crud on the rebar there. I try to clean the tools up before I show them to you on camera, but they are definitely tools that I purchased for my own use and I carry, so they're not always as clean as they could be because they have been worn in, so bear with me on that. Anyway, back to the suspension. So that's the first blade. I do like that it's locking. I like that it's outside accessible and one-hand opening. That's definitely nice. It's a little tricky to get out, but you can see it is possible to open it with the thumb stud there. On the other side, exactly opposite of that, so if you turn the tool over in your hand, this also has a serrated sheepsfoot blade, which is certainly nice for cutting things like paracord or rope. I like to have that separate of my plain edge blades, so I don't have to use the serrations unless I need to, because they are definitely kind of a pain to sharpen. So that's pretty nice. They're, again, kind of small, but it is locking, it is one-hand openable and outside accessible. So let's just go ahead and start through the implements on that side, and I'll show you some of what it has to offer. First thing here is a combination cap lifter or bottle opener and can opener. It's kind of an interesting tool. It looks a little long and gainly to me, so I do worry about its strength a little bit, but being a can opener shouldn't put it to too much abuse. You can see it's ground there to kind of make it sharp. However, let's see if I can get a good view on this. If you see that the point there of the can opener is not ground very sharp. Can't get my camera to quite focus on it exactly, but it is not ground as sharp as I think it could be for a can opener. I haven't tested this on a can yet, but I will be here pretty soon, so I'll try to let you know how that goes as far as if that's functional. The cap lifter works okay. I don't have a bottle here to test it with, but I'm going to be doing a video here pretty soon comparing the cap lifters on all these multi-tools, so definitely look forward to that, or keep an eye out for that video coming out. Alright, let's go on to the next tool here. The next tool we have available is a rather long and kind of odd-shaped small flat driver. It's ground on both sides. It's a little shorter on one than the other, but it's a pretty nice precision grind. I believe the shape of this is designed so that when you hold the tool, actually I'm not sure why they designed it like that, but it looks like you hold the tool a little bit off to the side, which might make it a little bit easier to turn, but I think it's kind of an odd shape. I do like that it has a decent reach for a small tool. Sometimes you run into problems getting the small drivers into little locations. There again, these are all outside accessible, which is definitely a huge plus on this tool. I'm probably going to have to open the scissors here. I'll just go ahead and show you those first before I get to the lanyard ring, because the lanyard's pretty hard to get out. It has a pair of scissors here. They're spring-loaded. They open up alright. They lock solid. It seems like they cut alright. There again, we'll bring out the trusty piece of paper. And, they see they have no problem cutting through it. So, they function as scissors. As I've told you before, I'm not a huge fan of scissors on multi-tools. I know a lot of people are. So, if that's something you want, this tool definitely does have that to offer. And as I said before, it has kind of an interesting selection of tools, which is kind of hard to find at this price point all in one tool, which we'll talk about when I get into comparing it to the others. As I close the scissors here, I'll give you a quick look. It has a rather meaty lanyard ring, so if you need a lanyard ring to connect it or put a lanyard on to make it easier to remove from a pouch, that's definitely available. It does lock into place, and it's certainly meaty. You can see how thick that is. Same thickness as all the other implements, which are all pretty beefy. We'll switch back over here to the other side where the blade was at first. Taking a look right next to the blade, we have a very large and meaty flat driver. This one's a little bit more conventionally shaped. Seems pretty strong. You definitely wouldn't want to use it for too strong of prying tasks, but it could definitely do some light prying and some pretty good Phillips work. So I think that's pretty good. Closing that one up, we'll take a look here and see. This is a flat kind of Phillips. These work okay. You see this design on a lot of Gerber tools, and you have to be a little careful not to strip the screws with these if you're going to be using them in high torque situations, but in a pinch they work just fine. And then certainly last but not least, this is a pretty functional little saw. It's the same tooth design I've demonstrated for you on the Sidekick and the Wingman, so it does cut pretty well. It's definitely thicker than the Leatherman one, so it removes more material and cuts a little bit slower, but it's also less likely to bend than the Leatherman equivalent saws. So that basically walks you through all the tools. Let's go ahead and open this tool and take a look at the pliers. Now, one of my favorite things about this tool is it is spring-loaded. See here the tool spring itself open, and also it has these nice rubber pads on both sides, which allow you to bear down really hard on this tool. Very comfortable in hand. It has fairly meaty needle nose pliers. However, I don't like that they don't completely come together except for the very tip, which seems like it might limit their use a little bit for me. However, they do come together pretty well at the tip. As you can see, it's just barely the point that comes together. Also, they do have the same kind of squashing style cutters that I was showing you was a problem with the Sidekick and the Wingman. So I have a piece of 12 gauge automotive primary wire here that I've demonstrated cutting before with other tools. We'll take a look to see how it does cutting them. Definitely cuts it no problem, so no gumming issues there. Has a hard wire cutting notch in the back there, which would function pretty well for cutting harder gauge wire. I would have, let me grab my coat hanger here actually and show you what this tool is capable of as far as the hard wire cutting notch. I haven't actually tried this, so we'll see how it does. Oh, yep, that wasn't too bad. That's actually definitely comfortable in hand to cut, and it cut that pretty heavy gauge wire without much trouble. So I feel like the pliers are definitely a strong point of this tool. Let me show you a couple of things that aren't my favorite. First of all, it seems like there's quite a bit of wasted space in this tool. If you can see there's some pretty large spacers, there's pretty large washers in between all of the tools, which make it seem like it's a little thicker than it needs to be, which I feel is the biggest downside of this tool, is the overall size. But outside of that, this is actually a very well put together tool. It's a lot higher quality fit and finish than I'm used to seeing on a Gerber, so it's definitely a pretty decent tool. I want to talk about the tool set in comparison to a couple other tools in the price range. First of all, you've seen me compare the Sidekick before. Now, Sidekick has a saw on the outside. It also has an outside accessible blade. Inside it has the same tools that we've gone through before. One thing that bears mentioning is that the Sidekick does not offer scissors, and if you go to the Wingman does not offer a saw. So you either have to choose either or. So if it's important to have both of those, the Suspension may be a pretty good option for you. One of the other tools that Leatherman has that's in the price range is a Leatherman Rebar. This is kind of harkens back to the early days of Leatherman and their original Pocket Super tool. As you can see, one of the biggest things I like about the Rebar is these replaceable hard wire cutting, or these replaceable wire cutters. Those are made of 154 cm, and they're incredibly hard and strong, and they will easily cut paper, so they're very precision machined. This tool has very large, meaty tools. You can see there the large drop point serrated blade, and of course it has a large knife that I already showed you. This has a file, which is something the Suspension does not offer, is a file, which I think is kind of odd, but that's something you can definitely get in the Rebar. The Rebar offers a saw, but one thing you're not going to find in the Rebar is a pair of scissors. That's not included in this tool. So the Gerber Suspension is kind of a unique point in their line, as it does offer some features that some of the other tools don't, and I feel like it's pretty high quality. It feels more well built than a lot of their multipliers, like the Scout 600 series per se. It doesn't feel light and like it's made of folded sheet metal like the other ones are. This one feels machined and put together, almost like a Leatherman tool. So overall, definitely worth the money. For me, it's a little big and weighty. It's a very large tool. If you compare it there again to the size of the Rebar here, you can see how much of it sticks out, and I'm not quite sure why they designed it that way. So it's kind of like a butterfly shape, and it's pretty big in that dimension. You can see here that it's almost 2 inches across in that dimension. So that, combined with the 8-ounce weight, makes it a heavyweight tool, but it does have quite a bit of heavyweight functionality, especially as far as the pliers go. They're very meaty and strong, and it gives you a unique combination if you're wanting a saw and scissors. However, I feel like it is let down by the fact that it doesn't have a file. So overall, I definitely approve. If this is a tool that interests you, I recommend it. I certainly wouldn't replace my Sidekick, Wave, or Charge with it, but it would make a good backup I'll probably be putting this in a kit for a vehicle, as I feel like it'd make a good backup tool because it's nice and heavy duty. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank everyone again out there for your views. I certainly appreciate it when you like and subscribe, and I love to hear your comments, and I'll get back to you as many of you as I can if you comment. And look forward to some more videos coming out real soon. Thanks again.